ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Dharma Digs podcast, a podcast in pursuit of purposeful living. I'm your host, Taylor Winchester, also known as TW, and I'll say it like I say it every week. I'm super grateful that you have chosen to take a few minutes out of your day to stop by and tune into this podcast. So thank you for being here. All right, another solo dig episode coming at you this week. And before I get into it, I want to just do a few minutes of house cleaning items here, right? So up until now, this is the 10th episode. I just want you as a listener to know how grateful I am that you're here, as I mentioned already, but also that this is becoming also an opportunity for me to hold myself accountable in sharing some of the benefits that I'm finding from pursuing purpose a little bit more, and specifically with my meditation practice and the things that I'm learning and applying to these conversations. It's just been really rewarding for me, and I appreciate any of you that have shown any interest, especially the folks that have reached out and, kind of given me some feedback and letting me know how it's impacting you or what your thoughts are, what you're enjoying, what you think I can work on. I appreciate it all, and just the fact that any of you are engaged is very humbling, and I'm very grateful for it. So thank you. Second housekeeping item, that's the term, right? Housekeeping item. I got to give a shout out to my man, Leonardo Solis. He was the first interview I aired, which was, I believe, episode number 3. Most of the theme music or the intro, outro music that you're hearing here is it's always his music. He lended me some of the stuff that he's produced, and that's what it's been. When I do feature artists as an interview or a guest, I do sometimes roll their stuff in as well. But yeah, shout out to Leo. He and his wife, Kelly, just had welcomed a new baby boy to this world. So congrats to them. And thanks, Leo, for sharing your music with us. And we appreciate you, buddy. The other thing, last housekeeping item is if you are enjoying this and you haven't already, please follow me on the social medias just to keep up and maybe share some of your thoughts with me there. If you feel so inclined and want to, of course, subscribe. I do have a YouTube channel, which you can see some of my beautiful, beautiful friends that I interview on the show. But you can also subscribe wherever it is you're currently listening, be it Apple Music, Spotify. Tap that follow button, all that jazz. I appreciate any reviews you feel like leaving as well. It certainly helps this out. So enough with all of those items. Let's move on into the topic for today. Excuse me, which is reality and the stories we tell ourselves. So I recently listened to a Ram Dass talk, which you've probably heard me talk or mention him on this show before. I love to indulge in his content, some of his teachings. And I was listening to an episode or a talk he gave back in 1983 around reality. And it was really interesting to me because it's the talk he gave then, it could be just as, if not more so, relevant today, some of the points he was making. And it got me thinking a lot about reality in general and how all of our realities tend to be slightly different from each other's, and we don't always acknowledge that. And really what that reality is made up of, specifically on an individual level, are the stories that we tell ourselves and the stories that we go through in our heads. And I think acknowledging that and kind of bringing that to light is something that I felt could be a good topic. So to give you a little, let's do a little example, if you would here. I heard this on a recent group coaching session I was in. But if you take a moment, close your eyes, and I'm going to paint this picture for you and imagine going through this scenario. All right, you're walking down the street. It could be beach, mountains. It could be the city that you live in, wherever it is. It's not very crowded, just you, and you can see all the nature around, the cars parked by, whatever. You're walking down the street, you see from across the street, coming from the other direction, is somebody that as they get closer to you, you recognize. You're like, I know them. It could be from high school, it could be college, previous work experience. It's been a while, so you haven't seen each other in quite some time. Well, of course, you naturally wave and say, hey, how's it going? So-and-so. Well, then they don't respond. They keep walking by and don't even really acknowledge you. What do you think the reason for that was? Could be many things, right? So on this call, we, of course, all start giving our feedback. And what we noticed was that we all made up our own stories in our heads about the reason that person was or was not acknowledging that we were there. So this was really interesting to me because it started to also go in line with what Ram Dass was speaking about reality. So as I explore this a little bit more, you start to do some research, and there was a Henry Ford quote, and it says, "Whether you think that you can or you think that you can't, you're probably right." And of course, you've heard that quote before. I feel like so many people have said it, but it's an interesting point because what we tell ourselves in our heads can turn out, and typically does end up turning out to be, the reality that we live in day to day. It's the thoughts that proceed and carry on to the next thought, and it all snowballs. So if we don't take ownership of that and become more conscious around that, then we're probably going to feel the negative impacts of that. And it's really interesting to me how those realities as an individual level start to come together with other people's realities, and then that becomes a group reality. So for me, I'm starting to become more aware of that, and trying to also give myself some grace in the sense of understanding and appreciating and being open to other people's realities. So if you take that, whatever you think that you can or can't do, then you're probably right. It's a bit of the same mindset of saying, whatever moment I'm in right now is the only reality I have. And it's easy to fall into that trap. So if you can shift that a little bit and think about the positive of the situation, or how you can turn that situation into positive, then naturally it's going to be creating a more positive reality for you. So when I was thinking about media and how the media can play a role in this, I start to think about where we are in 2020, and with the election madness and the politics of things, some folks right now are going through a very harsh reality for themselves because they are feeling and buying into this idea of fraud around the election. And, everybody's welcome to believe what they want to believe, but at times I just worry about the direction we're going if our democracy is being questioned at the level that it is. And I think about that and how it applies to the reality that they're painting the picture of is full of fear, and it feels, at least in stuff that I hear, that it's full of fear. It's very negative in nature because it's of course putting blame and trying to place blame upon all these other folks. So that's a very real reality for them, and they're holding true to that and firm in their beliefs. And if I don't know how to change that, but if there's a way that we can make sure that we're being aware of our realities, and our thought patterns, and if they aren't negative, then perhaps we won't fall in those holes. So that's really just been something that has stuck with me a lot lately as I think through the talk that Ram Dass was speaking on, and his comparison was really also how our life experiences impact our realities, and everybody has their own individual experiences, their own story, and that impacts the stories that they tell themselves in their heads. And I thought about myself and how I've ended up where I am, and how some of the things within my career have shifted throughout the years. And a lot of that I do believe comes from exploring the idea of pursuing a passion for a living and working within and around the music industry. That was something that I said from an early age that I wanted to do. And of course, there are times where I probably held myself back in progressing upon that path by creating stories of maybe negativity or self-doubt, and things that maybe held me back a little bit from pursuing those passions. So maybe it pushed me to the reason that I joked in, I think it was the first episode, how I was the oldest. I felt like the oldest intern ever at 27 years old, interning in the music industry for the first time. But maybe I would have gotten started earlier if I wouldn't have had some of the negativity bias, and that's what also is a word that I was led to in the research of this the other day. So negativity bias falls right in line with the stories that we're talking about that we tell ourselves. So as Albert Einstein said, reality is merely an illusion, albeit a very persistent one. So the question that I'll leave you with today is, how do we as individuals um, become more aware and take a bit more of a intentional approach to creating the stories in our heads that are supportive of the direction we want to go, and shying away from negativity and leaning into the possibilities. And I'd love to hear from you if there are any ways that you're leaning into possibilities and trying to create better stories for yourselves, which turn into a better reality for you and your family and the folks around you. What's working for you? Is there anything you can share with me? Because this pursuit is a group pursuit towards purpose, and I'd love to hear from you. So thanks for indulging in this short but sweet conversation with me today. The reality and the stories we tell ourselves can hopefully impact you in a non-negative way, and we can all learn from it. And if you would share with me, I would like to learn from you. As always, if you enjoy what you hear, head over to wcreative.com. You can sign up for my email list and maybe check out some of the past episodes if this is a new one to you. As always, sending you out with love, light, and peace. Namaste. Enjoy your weekend.